God bless you. I'm Dr. George E. Perry, pastor of Greater Lighthouse Church. We're happy to have you worship with us today. We invite you to worship with us in person at 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Check your schedule to see what time we broadcast on this station. I want to assure you that God loves you, God will bless you and keep you. This is our prayer. God bless you. The descendants of Jacob, who we will call the children of Israel, and Jacob and Israel was the same person. And they had gone into Egypt, 70 individuals, and they came out 600,000 men without the women and the children, a couple of million of them. They had multiplied that much. While they were in Egypt, they were enslaved. They went in and they had preferential treatment because of Joseph. But as time went by, there arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. Well, I don't know if I ought to keep telling the story or just say something at this point. And I guess if I say something at this point, I would say that sometimes you have favor with people, but then those people pass off the scene and you think that the next person related to them going to give you favor, but they'll give you the blues. By the way, let me ask you this question. The descendants of Jacob, of the children of Israel, was who in relation? What was their relationship to God? That's what I'm asking. And the answer would be they were God's chosen, select, elect people. They belong to God. Hallelujah. And yet, they caught the blues. Actually, I want to say hell real bad. They caught it. And sometimes the devil tell you that if you so holy and you so righteous and you so you belong to God, you saved, how come you catching all of this static, all this blues, all this hell? How come you look around and see people who are living for the devil, they're living better than you sometimes. So these were God's select and anointed people who he had allowed to be taken captive in slavery in Egypt. But after 400 years of crying and talking to God, God finally decided to move. But you know, before you get to wondering how come it took him so long to move, I want you to know that there was a purpose for the suffering, and the purpose was to multiply them. Now you may not understand that, but just look. I was born in Houston. I never lived in the country, but they tell me that if you lived in the country and you worked hard for the folks, and you didn't have no television, what you did was made babies. You worked hard and made babies. You worked hard and made babies. That seems strange to us, but that's the method that God used to multiply the people, because he said, he sent them to Egypt to multiply them. You know, when you live comfortably, like some of us, you say, well, I just need 2 children. The American dream, you know, a family, 2 children. But I had went to a funeral about 2 or 3 weeks ago of a cousin, and Apostle Baker, his father, and he preached his father's funeral. And he said, my mama was fine, and my daddy was handsome. They didn't have birth control, and they didn't have self-control, which meant they had a whole lot of children in the house. And they did bigger than had a whole lot of children. For God multiplied his children. Well, that's why it takes so long before he delivered them. Sometimes we don't understand why we go through what we go through. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You ever go through something and then say, well, why did the Lord let this happen to me? I just want to remind you about another scripture that says, all things. God causes, not that they're good in themselves, but God causes. Help me say causes. God causes things, all things, to work together for good to them who love him. Do you love him? When you're going through heartaches, when you're going through trials, God has a purpose for it. Don't be upset. I didn't say don't feel disappointed. Don't be upset to the point that you want to get mad with God and let the devil tell you, why don't you curse God and die? Because that's exactly what Sister Job told Brother Job. He was sick, afflicted, he lost everything he had, and Sister Job told him, said, Daddy, why don't you curse God? Because you know when you curse God, God's going to sure enough kill you. Why don't you curse God and die? But what did Job say? You talk like a fool. Woman, you talk like a fool. All my appointed time, I'm going to wait till my change comes. I come to tell you, a change is coming. You come to church today, I come to tell you, Sister Thomas, a change is coming. You come over here to hear, a change is coming. Well, you heard the story. And God raised up a deliverer. His name was Moses. And after 10 plagues, and the last plague was the slaughter of the firstborn. That's when we had the Passover, and we're going to celebrate the Passover meal, which was translated into the Last Supper. We're going to do that after the sermon. And they put the blood on the doorpost and on the lintel. Death angel passed over and killed every firstborn animal and person in Egypt except God's anointed people, except the descendants of Jacob. Oh, that's another little point you ought to look at. God knows how to protect you even in the midst of your suffering, even in the midst of your trial, even in the midst of your difficulty. God is still with you. Why don't you tell somebody, say, God is with me.
God is with me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is. Amen. Turn to somebody else or just look around somewhere and just say, God is with me.
God is with me.
Mm-hmm. And as you heard the text read, when Pharaoh finally said, okay, you guys can go and sacrifice to the God, to your God, because Moses had asked him, let us go into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God for a 3 day sacrifice, and we'll come back. And in the meantime, help me say in the meantime, God told the women, through Moses, to go borrow all the jewelry, gold and silver, earrings, and all this, that the women had. They're going to worship God. And the assumption was, when we come back, we'll give it back to you. But I tell you all the time, God is slick. Help me say, God is slick. He's wise. He knows how. He knows why. He knows when. He knows where. He knows how things should be coordinated. He knows how things should happen. And they got all this, they loaded down, they got all these Egyptians, got bags full of, you got this ching-a-ling, the bling. Y'all got all that bling, y'all ladies with all this bling. They had a ching-a-ling, bling, bling, and they had it in the bag and they was going out, loaded down. But they get to God. Now listen to this carefully. God was sending them back to Canaan, the land that he had promised Abraham, Isaac, promised Jacob. Now we're leaving out of Egypt and we're going back to that land because God had promised them that land. And let me just say this to you. Whatever God has promised you, I don't care what the difficulty is, you're going to get it if you stay with God. Amen. I thought God told me 20 years ago that he was going to do this for me. He is. He is. Because he told Abraham, I'm going to give you a son. And my goodness, it was 25 years later before that son, Isaac, came along. Abraham, Isaac. I'm going to give you a son out of your own loins, out of your own bowels. Sarah going to have a baby. We used to sing a song, Annie had a baby, but Sarah had a baby, and she was too old to conceive. But God did the impossible. They had passed menopause and couldn't have no more children. And God said, I'm going to give you a baby. Say, Lord, help. That's the only way it could have happened, that the Lord help. That's the only way it could have happened. But what am I saying here? God can and will do the impossible in line with his purposes. And so I said earlier, if it's 20 years ago God told you something, don't worry about it because it's going to happen if you stay with God. Somebody ought to say wonderful. God tries our patience and we shake our head and I'm getting tired of waiting. And we say, how long, oh Lord, how long? But I want to tell you, just hold on because he may not come when you're, but he will be. And then God lets them go. He said, okay, and listen to this. They're on the way where? To the promised land. And they have a leader, but the leader is getting his directions from God. And God did a strange thing. Instead of taking them the most direct route, he detoured. Oh my goodness. I just want to say that. Sometimes you think you're going somewhere, either physically or in your mind or in your position, in your job, in your family, in your marriage relationship. You think you're going somewhere and you think God is directing you, and he is. Because all things work together for good. But then you have a detour, and the devil say, see, I told you. You know the devil, he's a liar. You know that, don't you? He'll tell you you ain't no good, and he'll tell you God ain't no good. And he'll say, if you say, because he told Jesus, if you be the Son of God, yeah, you put doubt in your mind. Yeah. Y'all still with me? God gave him a detour. And instead of going the most direct route, you know, it's kind of, we are impatient. I'm impatient. I don't know. How about you? I'm driving my car and the traffic doesn't stop. We got black. I just go all the way around, go down through the back streets, go on through the neighborhoods. And I told my little granddaughter, I said, I was living in Houston before they had freeways. And I know all the back streets. I know all the surface roads. See, when I was a little boy, I'm getting old, y'all. When I was a little boy, we used to marvel. My daddy was coming to Sunnyside on Corinth Street in his A-model Ford. Y'all know what T-model, A-model Ford is? That's what he had when he came in 1950. And they was working on the super highway. Anybody know what the super highway is? It's 45. That was the first freeway in Houston, I-45. And they called it the super highway because they had them hills. You go over the street and you didn't have to stop. Before 1950, you had to stop at every red light, every stop sign. You go on, but then they was building the super highway. That's what they called it. And you go over the main street and go down, go over, and just keep on going. So God gave Moses a what? Say it loud. And he goes around through the wilderness. I'm going to tell you the truth. Something, you may not be honest as I am, but something God does, you know what I say? Do you want to know? I say it don't make no sense to me. But see, I leave off to me and I just say that don't make no sense. Until after I find out why. I say, oh yeah. So God said, I'm going to take you through the wilderness. And then they got strategically, help me say strategically. I just thought I'd say that because it's a big word. Strategically pinned in. They got hemmed in. They couldn't go nowhere. I'm going to give you a subject in a minute. But I want to ask you this. You ever felt hemmed in? You ever felt jammed up? You ever felt blocked? I felt blocked recently. I asked the Lord, what? And I stomped my feet. I said, God, what you doing to me? Why you won't let this happen? How come you blocking me? I'm trying to do this, and every time I try to do it, you put a block in it. You put a hindrance in it. You take my money. You won't let me do what I want to do. Ain't nobody talking but me. I guess I'm the only one that ever been like that. But I'm going to tell you, I've been like that. And I stomp my feet and I feel bad. And sometimes I yell, God, what you doing to me? And I'm saved. And sometimes you think because you ask God that, you ain't saved. You saved. And when God gave him a detour, the people said to Moses, what you doing to us? Y'all read it? Y'all heard when we read it, didn't you? They said, we told you before we left Egypt to leave us alone. See, sometimes we think we opt for the best of two evils. But God don't want us to opt for the best of two evils. What he wants to opt for? He wants to opt for the best, not the best of two evils. Because he come to give us the abundant life. Jump on your feet and say abundant life. Jump on your feet. I just want you to wake up. You may be seated. Get your blood circulating. He wants you to have the, shout it out. I come that you have life and that more abundantly. And so you have to learn to trust God. So they got hemmed in. And they're telling Moses, we told you before we left Egypt, leave us alone. Now, wasn't no graves in Egypt. You got to bring us out here to die in the wilderness. We not even have no graves to bury. We're going to lay dead on this old wilderness ground. We could have got a cemetery back in Egypt. We did have something good to eat, even though we were slaves. And oh my God, we got some people today got a slave mentality. They don't want to be independent. But anyway, that's another story. But God was the one that was directing their path. God was the one that was hemming them in. And Pharaoh said, we got him now. And sometimes the devil says, I got him now. We got him now. We got Lighthouse now. Look at him. We got Pastor Perry now. We got you. Whatever call you, you got him now. And I heard the word said, be not discouraged, whatever betide, because God will take care of you. How they surviving over there? I want you to know God is a provider. I was trying to make this, God will take care of you. So God led them through the wilderness to the point where they were hemmed in. Help me say hemmed in. Hemmed in. Don't you know that's a discouraging place to be in? But do you remember they were God's people? I want you to think this morning. I don't want you to run around the church. I just want to put something on your mind to increase your faith and encourage your heart. They were hemmed in by God. We sit there and say, oh, I'm going to church today. I don't want to go to church. I just feel bad. I'm going out and doing this morning. I feel so discouraged. I feel so. And I forgot to pray for Sister Anderson, too. I forgot to call her name, Monique. And she's not here, Brother Anderson's wife. She's not here this morning. She's been in the hospital, and I didn't know it. And he told me this morning, said Monique had been in the hospital a day and a half, and he forgot to tell me. I said, well, I can't go visit and I can't pray unless you call me and let me know. Okay. But anyway, they were hemmed in, discouraged, wanted to go back to Egypt. And you know, it's a strange thing. We always want to go back to that which we are familiar with. I don't care how bad it was. That man might have been going upside your head, cussing you out, staying out all night, don't bring you the money, and when you get by yourself, well, it wasn't so bad after all. I guess I'll go back. Well, she wasn't so bad after all. Let me tell you something. Y'all remember Lot's wife? She looked back. God got her out of Sodom and told him, don't look back. Oh, that's another sermon. I don't know why. I'm talking to somebody. You know, you get out of a mess and God tell you, don't go back, don't look back, and you're scared to go forward. Like these people standing at the Red Sea, that God done hemmed them in. They don't have nowhere to go. Don't see their way, don't have no provision. Well, I guess I'll go back. I did have a little money. He was buying a little food. Tell you what, you better leave that little food alone. Because the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. And he's able to provide food from the sky. It's called manna. He's able. Somebody will help me say God is able. He'll make a way out of no way. But you got to trust him. You got to be in the way where there is no way to find out he can make a way. Am I making any sense to you? And so they're standing there all hemmed in because God put them there. And then they start crying to Moses, ready to kill him. And Moses cried out to God. Now I want to read verse 15 of the 14th chapter. This is the New Living Translation. Now, before I read the verse, let me ask you: you ever been crying out to God? Amen. Listen to this. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving." You come to church today and you say, what Pastor Perry preach about? Tell them my title was Moving Forward. Let me say it. Moving forward. Moving forward. If I was a cussing man, I'd say high in the dog with an H. We're going to move forward, and you got all this. I'm hemmed in. So I'm high in the heck, high in the world. How are we going to go forward and there is no way to go? Pharaoh is behind me. Mountains on each side. And there's a Red Sea in front of me, and there's too far to swim and too much water to drink. Now, can you blame them for crying to God? You can't blame them. I can't blame you for crying to God, but I want to tell you something. When you get in a heck of a mess, where you don't see your way, I come to tell you today, if you come here with negative circumstances in your life, if you come here with impenetrable objects and barriers in your life, if you're stuck in a rut, if you're stuck in the mud, if you're in bad relationships, if you had bad economic, financial news, if you messed up, I got good news for you. There's a word from the Lord. And he says, go forward. Now, I'm almost through. I'm more than halfway through, so don't worry about it. It was a time of inactivity. Help me say inactivity. Well, what do you mean? They were stuck and they were standing still. And you know what? Some songs y'all sing, you might not ought to sing them, but we sing a song, standing here, wondering which way to go. y'all ever heard that song? I'm standing here wondering which way to go. Well, sometimes it ain't nowhere to go. Anywhere you go is a bad way to go. And while they were standing there, not knowing what to do, crying out to God, that meant they expected God to work a miracle. And here's something I want you to take note of. Sometimes we expect God to do everything for us. But God said they had a part to play in this deliverance, in their deliverance. And then you read, and God said to Moses, listen to this, pick up your rod, or pick up your staff, and raise your hand over the sea. Sometimes God tells us to do some foolish things. I mean, they're not foolish, but they're foolish in our mind. You know, like told Naaman to dip 7 times in the river Jordan. You know, God can tell us, people were hungry, and he said, we ain't got but 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. He said, bring them to me. God can tell us to do some things we don't understand. Take this rod you got in your hand and stretch it out over the sea. Well, what do you have in your hand? I want to ask you, what do you have in your hand? I want you to remember what God has done for you. God has used Moses to take that rod. He turned dust into lice. He turned water into blood. Did 10 miracles with that staff. You got something. The staff is nothing but a piece of a tree, a piece of wood, a stick that you walk by. But oh, if you got something that's anointed, if you got something that's blessed by God, use it. I'm Dr. George E. Perry, pastor of Greater Lighthouse Church in Sunnyside section of Houston, where Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light of the world.